Oliver Breeze first joined the reserves in 1996. After nearly 30 years of dedicated service, he continues to give back to the community. His first deployment to Timor left a profound impact, inspiring him to help organise the donation of road trauma equipment to the region. Later, Oliver would return to Timor a second time to personally educate local communities on how to use the life-saving equipment. He is a proud Australian with a huge, generous heart. This is Oliver Breeze. Ollie, I just want to take you down the path of veteran suicide. It's impacted on you personally, and I just wonder if you'll take a few moments to tell us about that.
Sure. Yeah, it's always confronting when I talk about it, Phil. So a mate who served in Timor, and I'm sure his family won't mind me mentioning his name because I do every year for the start of the walk, Sergeant Anthony Timmerman, tragically took his own life, and it affected my wife and I directly because we'd spoken to his family prior to that tragedy, offering help and financial help. AJ and I were both Rangers together, so we knew each other as corporals and we knew each other through our civilian occupations. We did the Flinders fires together, back in the early 2000s, whenever the big fires were in Flinders, and we had a strong relationship. We had a lot of time for each other's company. So, like any death, it was a tragedy, but it affected me because of the nature that Claire and I'd reached out and said we're available to help him. So, I guess 4 years ago, through social media, and I don't use it a lot, but through social media I heard about Soldier On's March On in March. So it's a 96 kilometre charity walk, and most people do 5 kilometres a day for the month of March, 96 kilometres being the length of the Kokoda track. I said to a mate of mine, why don't we walk to Devonport and do it in a night? And I used Google Earth to see how long it would take to walk 96 hours. So Google will tell you it takes, 96 kilometres, sorry. Google will tell you it takes 20 hours. And with about a month of lead-up training, 9 of us stepped off from Prospect and walked to Devonport. That was our first year. It was challenging, but very rewarding. Obviously 9 defence members back then, and we had support from my wife, who's a nurse. She works at A&E, and another paramedic, and Ray Langar would come along. Obviously you'll talk to Rails later, as one of our support drivers. So we had 2 support crew, or cars, and crews back then, and we walked all night, and we raised over $9,000 the first year. I think this year's our 5th year. Last year we raised well over $24,000. I expect to have over 30 walkers this year, and the walk is called the Long Patrol Walk. So the Long Patrol is a book written by Richard Plunkett about our deployment to Timor in the Interfet days. And I need to pick up a name for this charity walk that I established. The Long Patrol seemed quite fitting because it is a very long patrol. It's a really good opportunity and great for your mental health, Phil, because we walk in different groups all night. We walk throughout the entire activity. We stop for obviously meals, but you're talking to someone different every couple of hours about their background in defence. We have fireys, ambos, police, correctional officers, people from all walks of life, and more recently people from my gym have been saying, because I train obviously leading up to the walk, people say, oh, what are you doing? I'll come and join you. And now it's more about the charity. Before it was like defence members are doing this walk. Now anybody can do the walk. The first couple of years I predominantly recruited defence members because it's good for your mental health. But now if anyone says I want to do it, I just talk to them about the walk, the sponsorship, what we do, why we do it, which is very important, and hopefully the money we raise with Soldier On is going to veterans that are in need of help. Obviously the charity is nationally recognised, but the Long Patrol is a bunch of Tassie guys and girls that every March long weekend step off and walk all night, and I hope to see you there.
Pretty good time, average 8.5 kilometres, running about 15 kilo, no pain, so I'm happy with that.
All right, just give us your full name, your rank and whereabouts now you're posted to.
Oliver James Breeze. I'm a Lieutenant, the Troop Commander of 160 Troop, 2nd Force Support Battalion, and I proudly look after Kokoda Barracks in Gun Street, Devonport.
Let's talk about your reserve history. When did you first join?
So I was recruited at AgFest in 1996. Back then I ran my own business. I was an agricultural contractor and circumstantially set up next to DFR, right next to 1240. So I was out there displaying my contracting business and ability. Over a 3-day period, got to know the guys from 1240 and transitioned into the reserve, enlisting on the 26th of April 96. So I had a family history within the military. Dad was, he served in World War II in the RAF. My great-grandfather, who I never met, my grandfather I never met, was in World War One. And on my grandmother's side, who again I didn't meet, her dad also served. So significant family history. My dad's uncle, Keith McNish, died in Gallipoli. I have his original medals at home and all my other family descendants' medals. So I guess 3rd generation to serve. And as you know, my wife also served for 15 years regular and reserve time as well. And
so quite a significant history. What did the fact that your father and grandfather served in conflict, what sort of impression did that have on you growing up?
Dad was proud of his service in the RAF. He didn't talk about it a great deal, but I guess he was born in 1927, so he enlisted in the RAF right at the end of the war. Enjoyed his time in the Air Force. Didn't talk about his actual role a great deal, but as a young person, I guess it formed an impression on me that it was a good thing to do. And obviously growing up in a rural environment in Tassie, hunting, fishing, just being in the outdoors, it was certainly an easy transition to go to infantry. And having grown up, I guess, camping regularly outdoors, not knowing a great deal about being an infantry soldier, but living in the bush was not something foreign to me. And once I enlisted in 1240, I just thrived. A lot of mates, and still serving with some guys that we went through Singo with today.
So you've had an interesting path as a private and as an NCO. You made a transition at some stage from infantry. Where did you head to?
Yeah, Phil, I've had a really interesting career because I was infantry. I was a park ranger for nearly a decade, so I worked for Tassie Parks and Wildlife Service, and I was stationed at Mount William National Park in the late 90s, and I had a very robust training warrant officer who had a difference of opinion in the reserve world. This is obviously back in the 90s, and he said, Private Breeze, if you can't make every weekend, we don't want you. Now, as you know, mate, that wouldn't happen these days because it's one army, and we're very fortunate to actually change that mindset that we value anyone's contribution. But with his robust knowledge, I left infantry and went across as a medic. So I transferred here to Patterson Barracks, to 10th Field Ambulance back then, and then later 10th Health Company. I got my first hooks as a medic, become a corporal, and really had a fantastic, I guess, 8 or 9 years working in that area. Did a lot of support work, a lot of range work, a lot of support for all the units acting in any role on the island, and also interstate opportunities. And then I guess in about 2005 or 6, the medic ARES career transitioned where the ECN as a combat medic was being phased out. And it's been too long since I remember the ECN number, but I had ended up with 5 different ECNs. But my RSM, Graham Blackwell at the time, had a one-way discussion with me saying, we're going to transfer you into RAOC, and I decided, no, I don't want to do that. But obviously RSM to corporal, he decided that's the best place for me. So I went into RAOC. And it was actually good career guidance because the medic stream actually obviously phased out in the reserve world. And I went into RAOC and still, I guess, worked as a medic somewhat, but ended up doing a clerk's trade. And never really worked as a clerk, but I wore the RAOC hat badge for a number of years, and then transitioned to Royal Australian Corps of Transport a couple of years ago. So now my fourth hat badge, Phil.
So 4 corps rather than just 4 postings. So you've moved across from infantry to medical to RAOC and now RACT, the Corps of Trucks.
4 hat badges in 28 years. When I talk to recruiting, because that's my secondary role as a troop commander, I do recruiting for the battalion. If someone says, "Oh, what do you think I should join?" I am pretty confident with my background that I can go into some depth about some of the roles and opportunities that a reserve member can have here on the island.
Yeah, indeed. There's only one corps, mate. That's infantry. So, how have you found your career over these years? You know, what does it personally mean to you?
I've had a very rewarding career. I've got a very supportive wife who, as I said, Claire was a medic, then a nursing officer. And so she's been very supportive. So every time I've been somewhere or deployed, she's been right behind me. So many opportunities, Phil. In 2006, I was awarded the Tasman scheme as a corporal, travelled to New Zealand for a couple of weeks. Did some horrible things over there like scuba diving, catching crayfish, sightseeing, worked with the Auckland Northland Regiment. It was a fantastic way of spending 2 weeks on reserve salary, getting to sightsee the island, and obviously went to the range and did some proper army stuff. But following that, I was fortunate enough to win the Prince of Wales Award in 2011. Around that time, I transitioned from being a park ranger and I worked for the State Emergency Service for 7 years. So I worked for Department of Police and Emergency Management. I was a regional officer. So a big part of my role was search and rescue liaison with Tasmanian Police. And I spoke to one of my good friends who was a SAR coordinator. I said, if you had an opportunity to study search and rescue management in the world, where would you go? And Sergeant Gilly said, "I'll try and go to Canada." So I went to Canada in 2011. I studied search and rescue management at the Justice Institute of British Columbia, and then worked with the New Westminster Infantry Unit for a few weeks, going through some of their training bases. And in Canada, as you know, everything over there is very scenic. Shot on probably one of the best, or most scenic ranges in the world, with pine trees lining each side of the range, snow, automated target systems, and just one of those experiences where you think this was, I'm getting paid to do this. Did 2 weeks with the New Westminster Infantry Unit, and then did some work with the Surrey Police. So did a ride along with the police for a few days, went out to the range with their SOG, or I think they call them certs over there. So I got to fire their, police tactical weapon systems, and 6 weeks in Canada, including skiing Whistler for 3 days. So when people say to me, recruiting, what's some of the best things you've done in your career? Obviously my deployment, and places like diving New Zealand and skiing on Whistler. It's pretty hard to beat a day skiing at Whistler when you're getting paid by the Army to be over there as an exchange on deployment. So a very fortunate career between the Tasman scheme, the Prince of Wales Award, and the many opportunities I had as an instructor, because I was an instructor for 9 years. I guess having the ability to show people some of the opportunities that the Army Reserve has been a very rewarding career.
So with your career, then, I'm reminded that Winston Churchill once labelled those that were involved in the militia, the reserves of the day, were twice a citizen, because they would go away and do their job and do their, go and then train to do their militia work as well, or the reserve work. Do you think you sort of embody that statement in what you've been able to do by translating your skills into your civilian skills into defence, and your defence skills into your civilian roles? Yeah,
absolutely. It's certainly a transferable skill set, and I guess the occupations I've had, being as a park ranger for a long time, working in search and rescue or state emergency service for 7 years, and now in my occupation as a correctional officer, a lot of my skills, experience and attributes would come from many dedicated years in the reserves. And I know that, Phil, from the job applications I've written, being a public servant for 26 years, when you look at some of the selection criteria that the government want, a lot of my experience comes from wearing the other uniform. So certainly transferable skills, and certainly some of the skills we get in the reserve you can't obtain anywhere else. When I applied to be a senior ranger in the Northern Territory, working in remote, isolated communities for extended periods of time, look at an infantry section commander. You work in remote environments, and teamwork, leadership, problem solving, all those attributes that are second nature to reservist, I've certainly found have helped me along the way.
Let's talk about Timor. So you went there for, I guess, your only deployment during your career so far?
Yes, sir.
So tell me about how the lead up to it. When were you first notified? What did you have to apply? Were you nominated? Just take us through that process.
So I was serving with 2FSB, 2nd Force Support Battalion at the time, with 10 Health Company, or 10th Health Company back then. And around that time, 2006, 2007, we obviously had troops in Iraq, Afghanistan and Timor. And there was a number of reservists shortlisted and went through vaccinations for deployment opportunities. I know we were shortlisted because there was only about 9 of us that were looking to be deployed, and it was basically there was opportunities, and depending on what your ECN, your skill set, I went through all the vaccinations and we were basically waiting for an opportunity. I worked for DPAM back then, so obviously made my employers aware that it's highly likely I'll get deployed in the next period of time. And as you know, as a reservist, you don't know where you're going, it's just opportunity. Earlier that year, obviously there was an assassination attempt on Ramos Horta in Timor, and things escalated, and we were put on basically rapid deployment short notice, and I went over to assist 3RAR with the S1 cell. So I was fortunate, I had like 3 or 4 ECNs back then, so I guess I could fit into a few different roles, but I got posted to the S1 cell to work within the orderly room of Phoenix, Camp Phoenix in Delhi, and I was there for a short time and then got transferred over to the RSO&I, so reception, staging, onwards and induction. So I was a corporal back then, and yeah, slotted in pretty well. I was obviously a little bit nervous working with 3 because they're such a proud and historic infantry unit. Being an ex-infantry soldier myself, I thought, well, I shouldn't have any real issues relating to them. But obviously, I know the difference between the culture of a reserve soldier and a ARA soldier. To be honest, mate, they were really good to work with. Most of the guys that I either bunk with or work with closely, when they asked what I did in the civvy street, which is the term we use obviously, they were like, oh, that sounds like a cool job. So I didn't get any of that, are you just a choco? I had very little stirring or ridicule about, oh, you're just a choco here on, on an opportunity. It was a really good opportunity to get over there, and I found it a good experience.
Tell us about your time there. Where did you go? What did you see? What were the highlights? What were the challenges?
I guess once I got posted into RSO&I, my main role, every time we had anyone arrive in country, which was, and it's pretty too long ago to remember, but flight days I think were Wednesday and Friday. Every time someone arrived in country, I was there at the H-pod or at the A-pod at the airport to greet them and do the reception, staging, onwards and induction. So what that means is I'd grab I had a 110 issued to me, I'd grab a COE, we'd get a road space request, go from the H-pod into Phoenix, get all the battle group documentation, draw stores they needed, meet them at the A-pod, give them a briefing, vet their documentation coming in. A lot of the infantry guys would then move on to one of the FOBs, so Vakeki, Los Palos, Bacau. It's just too long, Phil. But yeah, we'd get them on to the next Huey or Black Hawk or March 90 out to wherever they're going. So a lot of liaison, and I guess my civvy job back then was a lot of liaison with interagencies. So it was not a difficult job. As an NCO, I'd go and talk to a flying officer. This person needs to go to this location. I need a PAX list. Chuck his details on there, his or her details. Ensure that they had everything they needed before they jumped on the chopper to go out. and ensure we had all their documentation. So, as you know, for honours and awards, the day they arrive in country, that document has to get back to Phoenix. So I guess it eventually gets back to Australia. So my job was to make sure that signatures were there, they knew where they were going, we knew they were fully vaccinated, and they had all the kit ready to do whatever they were doing. And that included dignitaries and senior officers. It wasn't just infantry soldiers going out to the FOBs, it was anybody coming into country.
Ollie, in relation to RSO&I, as part of a vital part of briefing people into country, what were some of the things you actually went through when they were physically in the classroom in front of you?
It's a long time ago, Phil, but if I recall correctly, a lot of the stuff was information critical to their deployment, where they're off to, how they're going to get there, what they need, health and safety. So obviously, from memory, rabies were prevalent within the monkey population over there. Obviously, malaria was a big issue. That's why we're on doxycycline. So ensuring that they're aware of the hazards, ergonomic hazards, animal hazards, obviously the hazard of the occupation where we are, and just briefing them on their SOPs. That was a document, particularly with the medical staff. We'd actually hand them out information about that, so we'd brief them on that. Brief them on the legal team were there for off and rules of engagement. So we'd liaise directly with a legal person who would go through their critical information. Ended up answering a lot of questions from younger guys that had come in. What's it like, where we're going, how far away is that? And that's natural, because I know my first day, we stayed somewhere else in country and the head was like a swivel. Like, where are we, what are we doing? And that was pretty much to be expected anytime someone came into attachments or just relief in country when we're doing ROCL. They want to know what my role is and where am I going to be. And so you'd filter those questions and go through the safety and security and give them just a soldier's five on what to expect for the next 24 hours, particularly if they were being transitioned, perhaps staying in Phoenix or the H-pod before they flew out to the FOBs. Because as you'd recall, not every day we had choppers. Sometimes they were trucked out, and then you'd have to find them accommodation, and that was just part of the role. It's only because you asked that question I remember doing that, because we were always trying to find accommodation, and we had the QRF in one building, and the temporary short-term accommodation in the H-pod from memory was next to that, and that's where you'd throw anyone who was basically being trucked out in the back of a MOG in the near future.
What were some of the highlights of your deployment there in Timor?
Obviously, as a reservist, getting the call up to go, that was perhaps one of the biggest highlights of my career. But once I was in country, I had a lot of opportunities, Phil. I got to fly everywhere. So I did a lot of time on helicopter flying at the FOBs. Even stuff like delivering mail. I seemed to just be in the right place, right time, and someone, "Oh, do you want to jump on a helo and go and deliver this out to Vaqueque or Los Palos?" Sure, you just jump on and go for a fly around. My career guidance officer, one was Class 1 Pedro Peterson, arrived in country after I got there, and I'd known Pedro since I was a young infantry soldier. So he was very casual, and we had a good relationship from day one. So we managed to acquire a road space request and tour around Delhi to doing just public relations, if you like. And Pedro and I would duck up the Jesus statue, duck out to one of the bases. Obviously, as a WO1, he had a fairly big and a broad ability to get places. So we just went wherever we wanted. Did that quite a bit, actually. Got out to the refugee camps, had a look through, I guess, some of those less fortunate conditions, which perhaps some people in my position didn't have that ability. I managed to pretty much get everywhere we were operating. The Australian New Zealand Coalition Force was operating at the time. I went to every base, and I just had so many opportunities. Enough so that I really wanted to go back.
So, in relation to those IDPs, those internally displaced persons, did it seem unusual to you that even nearly a decade after independence, that Timor was still struggling with violence, with the rebel army, with political violence, and that people were still displaced like that?
Yeah, it must have been, it affected me seeing, I think when I arrived, there was like 9,000 refugees, and there was one camp right next to the H-pod, and certainly on the way to Bacau, I went to a big one out there, and as you said, we'd been there for so many years. And such a massive UN footprint in the country, to have so many displaced people. One thing that, going to the Tice marketplace like that, where you see kids that are just living on the streets, that I guess affected me emotionally, is the fact that they had very little to eat, and yet we had so much. And I remember quite a few robust discussions with officers saying, why can't we feed them? Well, it wasn't our role. But as a young person, and I wasn't a parent back then, I couldn't understand why these kids were in such poor condition. And particularly as a medic, I could see skin conditions like ringworm and chronic just skin infections that just, from my understanding as a young corporal, why weren't we helping them? Of course, it wasn't my role, but I just remember as an Australian on doing a tour of duty, I always thought we could do more. And I reflect on that a fair bit, just seeing so many young people that were in a poor state of health. But I wasn't aware of the bigger picture, of course, and was not aware that that wasn't our primary role.
Were you aware that that Timor was still under the administration of the United Nations at that point?
To be honest, Phil, it was, I would speculate and say yes, but it's a long time ago.
Yeah. So Timor had a profound, quite a profound effect on you, and you did mention the fact that you when you were there, you left and you wanted to go back. You did go back. What did you do?
So obviously during that time I was employed with the State Emergency Service, and we were using road rescue equipment, and I was training volunteers and did a plethora of accidents in that role as a regional officer. And due to our very good safety standards here in Australia, our equipment was turned over every 10 years, because it was obviously to Australian standards. So our spreaders and cutters, the rams, or as people would know, the jaws of life, all that gear has a 10-year shelf life. And a lot of the gear that we use in road trauma is pretty much binned or destroyed. And I thought, gee, we could probably get this stuff in country. And a mate of mine who, as a Tassie police officer, he'd served over there with Interfet, and between us we talked about the amount of car accidents we'd seen when we were travelling around Timor, and the fact that their first response gear was archaic, non-existent, and they really had no gear. I remember on the way out to the border, there was a van rolled over, and quite a few injuries and a couple of fatalities. And Damon Smith saw the same thing when he was over there, like just no first response gear. So myself and Damon, a good friend, Matty Buck, who was a paramedic back then, and Andrew Pitt, who was a career fiery, we got together and formed a committee called Op Rescue Assist. And with the good help of Rotary, Lions Clubs, and a number of businesses that I won't try and recall because it's too long ago, but a lot of support from the local community, the Mayor of Launceston, a lot of people got behind us, and we donated about 70k worth of road trauma gear to Dilly Fire Brigade. Obviously we were still in country, so Australian forces were still in there. So as you can imagine, a massive amount of liaison with the government to get this happening. One of the oil rig companies actually funded our airfares over there. Toll Shipping funded the equipment to be boxed up and sent over there. And we're talking like pallets a year. We had pretty much everything that a road rescue light appliance would have here on the island. So full set of Lucas road trauma gear, so spreaders, cutters, ram, hydraulic gear, chainsaws, hooligan tools, PPE, donated from a local business, first aid gear, all the entry tools you can imagine, just so much. It was a fair while ago, 2011, but so much gear was given to us in kind, and some of the stuff that SES were disposing of and the Tasmanian Fire Service were disposing of, we just boxed up, sent over there, and the four of us with a LEC, a local employed civilian, who was our interpreter, liaised with the Australian government, and they put us up at Sparrow Force Lodge. We flew into country, I think for about 10 days, and trained the Dilly Fire Brigade on patient stabilisation, road rescue techniques, extraction techniques, and triaging. And with our LEC, our interpreter, we did a lot of, sign language and charades to improvise what we were trying to teach them, because my language was not brilliant. I remembered some terms, still do today, but our local employed civilian Betty, she translated what we were discussing. We ran PowerPoints and we trained 10 of the Delhi Fire Brigade in how to actually safely extricate a patient out of a vehicle, spinal mobilisation, treating wounds, how to triage, and it was a really good experience. They put on a nice farewell for us at the end of it, and we gave them all the gear, and it was just something that was nice to give back to one of our neighbours, and also one of the poorest countries in the world. So to hand over all that second-hand gear, in some cases brand new gear, but to hand that gear over was, I guess it was a nice achievement.
Let's talk about your advancement now to the light side, to the officer ranks. How did that transition?
So when I enlisted at 1240, General Steve Smith retired, was my CO, and Colonel Darryl Blaisley was my OC. So I've known Darryl my entire career and worked with him regularly on a number of postings. But as my time as an instructor at Adelaide University Regiments, I had, the ability to train and mentor junior officers in fieldcraft, weapon handling drills and leadership. And so for 9 years, that was my posting, to teach junior officers the fundamentals of leadership. During that time, many discussions with Darryl about you should look at commissioning yourself, you should apply for ASWOCs, and I fought that urge for some time, and then put an application together, and then a good mate of mine, Captain Brett Coulson, discharged, and so that left no senior instructors in the north. So I pulled my application, and that upset a few people, because I thought if I leave the posting I've got, there'll be no one in the north. So I put it off another 3 years, and then eventually sat through the ASWOC application scheme, and I'm very grateful I did. Certainly Darryl's perseverance to say, Ollie, get onto it, you need to get this as part of your career, because I was not trade proficient in my role, having had 4 different hat badges. I've been all around the place, and I couldn't say an instructor forever. Obviously schema was saying you need to get back to your trade, and I thought, which trade is that? So I went through the commissioning scheme. It was a robust interview, and then fought pretty hard to come back to 2nd 4th Support Battalion as a commissioned officer.
How's that been for you? You've gone from being an NCO there, you ASWOC'd at the rank of sergeant.
Yes.
And you're coming back as a senior officer, or as a junior officer, but as senior to those ranks you left. How's that transition been there?
Pretty smooth. Having had, I guess, a fair bit of experience compared to other lieutenants, it was pretty seamless transition. Change a mess kit, change a mess. But of course, some vertical learning curves along the way. I did my LOBC course last year, and I need to polish up on some skills, but certainly with so many years of experience, I've found the transition very good. And being corps transferred simultaneously, that's different again, because obviously I could drive all the old fleet. I can't drive any of the new trucks except G-Wagons. So like any officer, I rely heavily on my warrant officers and sergeants to provide guidance on what the vehicle capacity is, how they operate, and I look at the command position there, and with my experience provide guidance and mentoring as required. Certainly one thing I do benefit from, Phil, is when one of my corporals comes in with perhaps a head of steam on and says, look, sir, you don't know what it's like. I often just sit back in my seat and smile, because he knows I'm ASWOC'd, and let him reflect on, well, perhaps I do, because I was a corporal once. And more than once I've had that, just a wry grin, thinking, well, I probably do. And they go, oh, well, I know you know what it's like, but it's so long ago for you. So I do find the role very rewarding. And to be honest, mate, it's opened up a lot of doors. I'm now the unit welfare officer, the unit media officer, and the battalion's recruiting officer. And I slide into that role in recruiting very easily because of my background.
Noting the essence of time, let's talk about your current career and how that's now linked back in to your reserve work. So what's your role now? Take us through that process.
So I've been a correctional officer, Tasmanian Prison Service for 5 years, a demanding role. Obviously we deal with the worst people in society on a daily basis. The catchphrase for Department of Justice, well not a catchphrase, but one of our goals is to obviously help transition those in custody to be released in a better headspace and provide guidance and opportunities and show them obviously some better ways to manage their lives. It's nice to say that. We have the ability to change people's lives and directions. In reality, it's a rather tough job because we deal with some very bad people. Great workforce, work are very supportive of reservists within the workplace. Last year I nominated them for the Employer Support Award through the ADF, and Department of Justice were fortunate enough to win it in Tasmania. Then we went up to the Nationals and they picked up an award for Employer Support in Sydney. So we've got a number of reservists that work for the Department of Justice. I look after the social club at the Launceston Reception Prison and in conjunction with a couple of other mates there. And we have a very tight cohort, very, very supportive workplace where obviously there's a tight bond because of the nature of the work we do. The clients don't change. There's new people coming in every day. You see some pretty confronting sights, but I really enjoy the work.
Great. Is there anything else you'd like to say just before we close off and you jump in that telephone box?
Phil, in the spirit of recruiting, if anyone's watching this thing, so I wouldn't mind having a go at the reserves, I'd recommend anyone call 131901 and look at a job in the part-time world because there's so many opportunities as a reservist. It's my 28th year this year. I have no intention of getting out, providing I maintain my fitness. I have no medical issues that I'm aware of. I'll serve until the day I retire. It's a fantastic career and it's given me so many opportunities.
Ollie, I just want to take you down the path of veteran suicide. It's impacted on you personally, and I just wonder if you'll take a few moments to tell us about that.
Sure. Yeah, it's always confronting when I talk about it, Phil. So a mate who's served in Timor, and I'm sure his family won't mind me mentioning his name because I do every year for the start of the walk, Sergeant Anthony Timmerman, tragically took his own life, and it affected my wife and I directly because we'd spoken to his family prior to that tragedy, offering help and financial help. AJ and I were both Rangers together, so we knew each other as corporals and we knew each other through our civilian occupations. We did the Flinders fires together back in the early 2000s, whenever the big fires were in Flinders. And we had a strong relationship. We had a lot of time for each other's company. So, like any death, it was a tragedy, but it affected me because of the nature that Claire and I'd reached out and said we're available to help him. So, I guess 4 years ago, through social media, and I don't use it a lot, but through social media I heard about Soldier On's March On in March. So it's a 96-kilometre charity walk, and most people do 5 kilometres a day for the month of March, 96 kilometres being the length of the Kokoda track. So you get sponsored to walk 96 kilometres in the month of March. A really good charity to get behind. For one reason or another, I said to a mate of mine, why don't we walk to Devonport and do it in a night? And I used Google Earth to see how long it would take to walk 96 hours. So Google will tell you it takes 96 kilometres, sorry. Google will tell you it takes 20 hours. And with about a month of lead up training, 9 of us stepped off from Prospect and walked to Devonport. That was our first year. It was challenging, but very rewarding. Obviously 9 defence members back then, and we had support from my wife, who's a nurse, she works at A&E, and another paramedic, and Ray Langar would come along. Obviously you'll talk to Rails later, as one of our support drivers. So we had 2 support crew, or cars and crews back then, and we walked all night, and we raised over $9,000 the first year. I think this year's our 5th year. Last year we raised well over $24,000. I expect to have over 30 walkers this year, And the walk is called the Long Patrol Walk. So the Long Patrol is a book written by Richard Plunkett about our deployment to Timor in the interfet days. And I need to pick up a name for this charity walk that I established. The Long Patrol seemed quite fitting because it is a very long patrol. It's a really good opportunity and great for your mental health, Phil, because we walk in different groups all night. We walk throughout the entire activity. We stop for obviously meals, but you're talking to someone different every couple of hours about their background in defence. We have fireys, ambos, police, correctional officers, people from all walks of life, and more recently, people from my gym have been saying, because I train, obviously leading up to the walk, people say, "Oh, what are you doing? I'll come and join you." And now it's more about the charity. Before it was like defence members are doing this walk. Now anybody can do the walk. The first couple of years, I predominantly recruited defence members because it's good for your mental health. But now, if anyone says I want to do it, I just talk to them about the walk, the sponsorship, what we do, why we do it, which is very important, and hopefully the money we raise with Soldier On is going to veterans that are in need of help. Obviously the charity is nationally recognised, but the Long Patrol is a bunch of Tassie guys and girls that every March long weekend step off and walk all night. And I hope to see you there.
Pretty good time. Average 8.5 kilometres. Running about 15 kilo. No pain, so I'm happy with that.